welcome to another Coach Dave Academy lap guide. This week is the first week of the new season, and we're in the Porsche GT4 at Oulton Park. It's one of the weird layouts without one of the chicanes. Without further ado, we'll just get straight into it.
You have about 5 laps of fuel left. You've got the fastest lap.
So there we are. That was the full speed lap of Oulton Park in the Porsche GT4. I'm now just before the start line on the replay of that same lap, and I'm going to talk you through all the driving lines, braking points, and track limits and things like that. So here we go, just coming across the start-finish line to start the lap. I'm sort of in the middle of the road here, just so that you can then come back to the left and be nice and straight as you start to brake. As you can see, the road sort of naturally curves left all the way along the start-finish straight. I'm looking for this marker on the left. Just as we go past it is when we start to brake, as you can see there. And you've got to be quite gentle in this one, just because you're turning and braking for pretty much the whole braking zone. So if you get too hard into the ABS, it doesn't want to turn, so trail braking is really important here. You can use all of this red curb. You could use even a little bit more than I get. I just about nibble at it, but it was okay. Just make sure on the exit you keep 2 wheels on the red and white curb. That seems to be the track limit if you go over that. But if you extend as much as I do here, you have to get back on quite quickly. I think if you have half the car over the grass here, that's when you seem to get off track. And then staying left as we go in towards the kink here, because this kink is easily flat out, but if you stay left, it makes it easier to stay on the right on the exit to get a better line into the following left. And just as we straighten up, just before there's an obvious downhill, which you can see more obviously from the cockpit. You can see the dip here. It's just before we get to that, we start to brake. And again, braking quite hard initially, but then you're turning in early, so you've got to be quite gentle. If you're braking in a straight line for longer, you could use more of the brakes, but because you need it to turn, you have to be gentle. It's kind of a 2-part corner, I find. Like, there's a bit of a dip there, where it feels like you're going to understeer, but then as you get the compression, just where I've paused this, the car compresses and you can get it back towards the apex. And you kind of got to wait until you feel that and make sure the car is rotating back towards the curb before you can get on the power. But from then on, once you do get the curb, you can get on the power really quite hard. I'm just leaving it in 4th gear through there. I found you can use 3rd, but you're near the top of the rev range immediately, so there was no benefit to doing that in my opinion. And then on the exit here, this is one of the stricter track limits in the game. I'm pretty sure, I think if you go more than half the car over the white line, it's an off track. It feels really harsh when you're driving, but just about staying within the limits here. Then we got a short straight before this fast left. And for this one, I'm just looking for this little escape road, this little bit here, and then the following one, and I'm braking somewhere in between them. It's mostly a lift, but a little bit of a trail brake just to get the speed down. You can see it's barely even enough to get the brake lights on. They've already gone off here before I faded off the brake. And you don't want to use this curb because it ends abruptly while you would still be on it if you did hit it. So I'm just trying to stay slightly outside of that. And then as the curb ends, back on the power, just making sure you're slow enough before you do that so you don't run wide. And then immediately, just as you exit in this corner, just as you're about to straighten the car relative to the direction of the track, you're getting on the brakes hard again for this hairpin. You can see I'm braking a bit harder here in a straight line and then fading off to get it to turn. So it's really important that you trail brake to make it turn. Otherwise, it's the ABS and it continues to go straight. But you can use all the camber of this corner to your advantage. I go down to second gear, but then once I get turned, you can see that I get really hard on the power. There's so much grip just because of the camber of the corner. The car's compressed the whole time. And then this chicane, it's a difficult one to describe because I don't really have a reference. I'm just looking towards the first apex and trying to judge my distance to it, I guess. But I don't really have any consistent marker for you to use for this one. But just make sure you stay to the right until you start braking and then sort of point it in towards the curbs. You want to try and take as much of this left curb as you can without hitting the wall, just to open up the right part. And then same again through here, you need to take as much curb and get as close to this barrier as you can, just to carry as much speed as possible. I dip 2 wheels here. That's about as much you can get away with. If you go any further than that, it seems to be an off track. But you do get plenty of grip here. You can see I go full throttle basically just after the apex. I'm almost full throttle. And even through the grass, I maintain full throttle. Because you're in third gear and it just seems to grip quite nicely. This is where the track differs from the standard layout. I feel like normally you do this chicane, but here we've got a really fast right. And I'm looking for this 100 board and also the change in tarmac, whichever you prefer. Just starting to brake slightly before that. It feels like you're pretty much on top of the 100 board when you're driving. But as you can see here, it's actually slightly before. Just braking gently, down 1 gear, and then turn in. You can cut a little bit of this grass, as I do here, but I actually think this is a slight bit too much, because I get a bit of air. So obviously while you're airborne, you're not turning. This is faster than missing it altogether, but I think there's a sweet spot if you just get maybe the brown part of the dirt here with the cut. Just to widen the corner as much as possible without getting this little jump that I get here. But I get away with it. It lands quite nicely, and I can get on the power really hard anyway, without running too wide. You can't really use this geo block because you don't get back on in time before the curb ends, and you would get an off track if you stayed 2 wheels on the grass as you went along here. Coming up here, I'm just staying tight to the left just to trim the track down a bit, trim the distance, and then moving across to the right, because for this next part, what we're aiming to do is to turn in, and just after the apex curb, we're trying to stay as far left as possible because that's the braking point for the following right. So as you can see here, just nibbling at this curb, and then as soon as we're off it, onto the brakes, and down 1 gear. We're trail braking here quite a lot because it's turning left and then right. As you can see, fading off the brake, trying to keep it turning, just balancing the throttle. This is definitely a 2-part apex. You want to hit this first apex here, just missing the curb, and then on the power in between the 2 curbs, and then make sure you get the second one as well, because the exit here, you go off camber over a crest. So if you're not pretty much pointing the direction you want to go, you'll end up off wide. You've got to get pretty much all the turning done before this crest. But yeah, feel free to use this red and white curb on the left. Then heading into the final corner, looking for this marker board here, telling you it's the right turn. Basically braking in line with that. It's positioned perfectly, to be honest. From the cockpit, that feels like you're basically exactly at it is when you stop braking. And for this one, I go down to third gear. I did try second, but it doesn't seem necessary. You get enough power in third, but you get so much more traction. And you don't have to. There's an additional up and down shift you don't have to do. Try not to take too much of this red and white curb for the same reason as one of the corners earlier. It ends before you would want to be off it if you did use it. So you would just end up going in the grass, and that hurts your exit because you get poor traction. But here you can see I'm picking up the throttle quite aggressively, even though it's a bit of an off-camber exit. Just make sure it's sort of a late apex, because much in the same way as the last corner, you go over this crest on the exit, so you get less traction. So you kind of want to be pointing mostly in the direction you want to go, just to make getting the traction that much easier. And use all of this red and white curb on the exit. Now it compresses and it's fine, the grip. Then if you're on a quali lap, stay as far left as you can. This is what I do here, just to try and get as good a time as possible. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the lap. So there we have it. That was the full lap guide for the Porsche GT4 at Oulton Park. I hope you found it useful as we go into week 1 for the new season. It's quite an interesting track to drive. It's a bit of a weird layout. With normally when I've driven this track, it either has both or neither of the chicanes. But yeah, it's the same with this car as always. You can be a bit more aggressive on the brakes than you can in the past. The ABS seems to be a bit more forgiving now, but you still got to really trail brake into the corners to get it to rotate on the brakes, and I think that's where you really unlock the lap time. But yeah, thanks for tuning in to another Coach Dave Academy lap guide. We do these every week, so feel free to check out the rest of the YouTube channel. And if you need any more information on anything we do, check out the website or the Discord, and you'll find everything you need. But that's it from me, so I'll see you in the next one.